Welcome back to the Fast Performance Baseball Podcast, the go-to audio field for coaches, parents, and players seeking to elevate their game and embrace the true spirit of baseball. I'm your host, Cole Thomas, and today marks a special moment in our journey together. We're rounding third and heading home in our enlightening 5-part series with Adam Sarancik, the architect behind the transformative Champions for Life coaching philosophy. In our previous episodes, we dived deep into the mechanics of building a successful player, the importance of mental toughness, the art of effective communication and coaching, and strategies for fostering resilience and teamwork among young athletes. Each episode has been a building block, not just in creating better baseball players, but in shaping young individuals who excel in all walks of life. Today, in our 5th and final edition of the series, we're bringing it all together. We're focusing on how to create a baseball leagues that don't just adopt, but embody the Champions for Life philosophy. It's about more than just winning games. It's about nurturing character, instilling values, and preparing our youth for the myriad challenges life throws their way. Adam Sarancik has been with us every step of the way, sharing insights from his illustrious coaching career, and today he'll help us understand how leagues can integrate these principles into their very fabric, ensuring that every pitch, hit, and run contributes to the holistic development of young athletes. So whether you're a coach looking to inspire, a parent aiming to support, or a player striving to be your best both on and off the field, this episode is for you. Let's dive in and discover how we can all contribute to a future where youth baseball is not just a sport, but a life-changing experience. All right, we welcome back Adam Sarancik for the 5th and final installment of our Champions for Life framework and philosophy breakdown. So this week we're going to talk about Champions for Life leagues and talking about how we can have a little bit more institutionalized control or better, communication throughout the league, right? As opposed to like the league has an idea of what they want to undertake, what they want the league to be about, more or less, right? So that way it's not just like team to team, cultures are different. We want almost kind of a singular culture in our leagues, correct, Adam?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Perfect. Well, then we'll just get on to our first question, which is when building a program culture, why do you start with why? Like, there's always the common question, like especially like sports psychologists, is that what's your why? Correct. How do you use that to influence recruitment of players and coaches to your league?
Right. Thank you, Cole, for having me on again. Appreciate all the hard work that you're doing, putting out content to your audience. Appreciate the coaches, players, the audience for taking an hour or so out of their day to get better and making sure that they're trying to impart the best that they can to their players and not just doing what they've always done. So we're going to talk a little Simon Sinek, the world-renowned leadership guru philosophy today in this first segment. And what I mean by that is he and others have acknowledged that basically every organization in the world, whether it's a program, a league, a sports team, whatever, they all operate on 3 things, all right? What they do, how they do it, and why they do it, okay? So the mistake that a lot of people involved with running these sports teams and programs and leagues make is they try to recruit players and build team culture based on what they do and how they do it. All right. We win games and championships. That's what we do. How we do it. We have great coaches that use the best facilities, the best equipment, the best technology so that we can win those games and championships. And yet, every great leader since the beginning of time has gotten the most out of their players, their members of their organization, by emphasizing the why. Why is it that you want to win games? Why is it that you have this program, this league? Okay. Why do you have a purpose? Okay. What is your purpose for doing everything that you do? What defines your program? When players leave your program, what are they going to say they got out of it? Okay. Now, the reason this is so important, the why, is because when you connect with the why as opposed to the what and the how, you connect to it's a very visceral, what they call a very visceral response. It means it connects to the part of the brain that controls emotion, okay, and behavior. It does not control language. So a player or a person who's involved in that league, organization, where they can't explain it, but they become to believe that it defines who they are. And that's why their response to the why is so powerful. Okay. So what's the leader do? The leader then offers a vision of something better. You're here. We're going to take you here. Okay. And the person, like we've talked about in podcasts in the past, you have to develop a sense of trust with your players so that they feel safe, that you understand who they are, how they learn, and they feel okay to be vulnerable, to fail, and to work through that failure, work through the adversity, okay? Once they have that trust, then they're going to work really, really, really hard for you, okay? They're going to be loyal to you. They're going to recruit for you. They're going to cooperate with you. They're going to adopt your philosophies and, more importantly, use what you've taught them to go out and teach others, okay? So every league has to ask themselves, say a baseball league, why do we exist, all right? What is it that we're trying to do here? Is it simply winning games and championships? Is that really what we're all about? We want to be known as oh yeah, you played for that league and that team, their best teams are really good. To me, that's really short-sighted. It's really short-sighted because, as we all know, number one, even if you develop a great team, not all great teams win a championship. Not even the best team wins every game, okay? There can only be one team that finishes in first place. Most of your players are not going to go on to play college or professional sports. So is this really the right thing to do, to put all our eggs into all-star teams and teaching to the top of our spectrum of players at the expense of everything else? As we've talked about also in the past, I don't care what team it is, if you are lucky enough to coach for a long enough period of time, the communication of appreciation you're going to get from your players is not going to be about those wins and championships. It's going to be about how you made them a better person, how you impacted their life. So as a league, I think we have to realize all these things. It's not about the wins and championships, okay? Yes, when we connect with a person, train the athlete, we're going to have the best chance to develop the player. We're going to win, all right? But that's not the sole goal, because it's going to cause us to be very short-sighted in the near term and in the long term. Cole, you and I grew up with, you're still pretty young, but you at least know at one time, baseball was known as America's pastime, meaning it was the most treasured thing in American sports. It's not even close anymore. It's not even close anymore, right? The NFL, for example, dominates everything. Well, why is that? Why is baseball no longer America's pastime? And I think this is something very real that people have to remember. Kids today have a lot of options that I certainly didn't have when I grew up, options about what to do with my time, how to connect with people. So their level of attention and how you can impact them to make sure that they feel like this is worth their time is much different today than it's ever been, okay? You're going to have to go about it much differently. And I think leagues need to understand that, that these players are getting bored, all right, playing baseball. And we got to figure out, are we really connecting with them on a deeper level so they feel like, I want to come back for the why. I want to come back because I'm having fun, because I think you care about me and I'm actually improving and getting better, which is helping me in every part, uh, of my life. So basically, how do we do that then? How does the league um, make this shift from solely winning games and championships to something deeper, something greater, that will really define at a much deeper level why they exist, and what their program is all about, what they're going to be known for? Well, obviously, the first thing we've been talking about in the first four podcasts, they've got to communicate to all their coaches, you know what? We're going to have a paradigm shift here. All right. We're not about just wins and championships. We're going to connect with these people on a personal level to make them better people. We're going to train athletes. Okay. If we want them to play multiple sports, we're going to train athletes, and we're going to have an athleticism piece to everything we do. And then we're going to not just make them great players at the top level, but throughout the entire league, we're going to make sure that we're developing players top to bottom. Okay. We're going to ask you as coaches and as leagues, when you goal set, set your goals for the entire year, that you actually proactively set goals, person, athlete, player. We're going to have them for the league, and we're going to ask that at these levels, 10U, 12U, 14U, whatever your levels are, minor, junior, senior, whatever they are, we're going to teach these things within each level, at each level, with all of these priorities in mind: person, athlete, player. Then we're going to require that you don't just teach by implication, you teach proactively through quotes, acronyms, role plays, guest speakers, these life lessons within the game for the beyond the game, about self-care and character and integrity, caring for others. And we're going to do this in everything we do: practices, games, and I'm encouraging even personal trainers to do this. Have your players play games with players with disability. Develop or connect with challenger leagues, and leagues with children with disabilities. That will send a huge, huge message to these players, how lucky they are to do what they do. And then finally, have your players serve others through doing community service without the expectation of monetary return. All your food and other drives for money, I get it, are necessary, but that's sending the wrong message. Okay, we're trying to develop people who understand that we need to serve whether we're getting anything out of it or not. Okay, so when you do all of these things, you're going to find that people are going to want to be a part of your program, whether it's the high school program, the youth program, your business organization. When they know that you're in it for a much deeper reason and purpose, that you can see beyond the top team, the first place team, the championship team, that you're caring about everybody on that level, you're not going to lose players and families to other sports and other activities. You're actually going to grow like we used to grow. And your players are going to promote your program. You want to play for that league. You want to play for those coaches. They get it. We developed, regardless of how good we were initially, they made sure that all of us developed as persons, athletes, and players. And they'll fight for you and be loyal to you forever, for their whole life. Okay? So that's the framework. Yeah.
Right. So, can you share a specific example of kind of as some follow-ups for that? Like, can you share some specific examples of how starting with why has directly impacted the attitudes and performance of young athletes in your program?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, well, let me give you some league-wide examples, and one very specific example that I think illustrates the point, and where leagues go wrong and how they can align what they are saying their purpose is and what they're actually doing. Okay. People say, or the league say, we're about player development, we're about teaching life skills, we're about this, but is that really the message that gets sent during the season? First of all, this whole all-star team thing is fine. I mean, everybody likes making the all-star team and playing on an all-star team. How long does the all-star team last? Might last 6-8 weeks if you're, say, a little league and you go on to some national world championship. It might last 2 weeks if you lose a game and you're out, or two games and you're out, whatever it is. May not last very long, and yet your whole season was built up to play on those all-star teams. Then you have club teams that are getting all the best players in an area and going out and competing against pretty marginal competition. And we've told stories in past podcasts about that. And they're thinking because they're winning games and championships, they're actually doing something that's amazing. No, you're winning games and championships. You're not really that good. All right. But at the youth level, we want to make sure that everybody's engaged and everybody feels really good about why we're here and why we're investing so much time in doing all this. So let me give you a very specific example about a league and what happened at this, during the season. This league preached and preached and preached, and always does, going in, that we're about player development. We're about making sure that everybody learns that it's about the team and it's about supporting each other, et cetera, et cetera. And this was a very, one of the things they do at the very young levels, the 6 to 8 year old coach pitch T-ball level, is at the end of the year, they don't really have an all-star team. They have a jamboree, what they call a jamboree, where they bring all the teams together at the end of the year. And they have 5 competitions. All right. They have a speed in running the bases. They have a long toss, an accuracy toss, a hitting for distance, and a shuttle run. All right. Those are like 5 competitions. And so they have the teams do those competitions, and there's no instruction to these kids about how to do these things, because some of these kids have never done this, like shuttle run, in their practice. They don't know what a shuttle run is. So there's no instruction. So you've got 8-year-olds against 6-year-olds. There's this wide ability gap. There's no instruction, and they simply measure how far they threw, how far they hit, or whatever. And after everything's said and done, they give out awards who did the best, who hit the farthest, threw the farthest, ran the fastest, etc. Well, it's completely opposite with what they preached the entire year their league mission was for player development and rewarding team spirit and life skills and things like that. Completely the opposite. What they should have done is, A, give these kids some coaching about how to do their best at whatever these 5 competitions were, and have them do it initially, have an initial assessment, give them instruction, and reward the kid that improved the most, i.e. in line with your league culture of improving the best. Or if you want to emphasize the team aspect, the team that improved the most. Or have them do it, like I say, once, give instruction, and then reward the team that improved the most. If time is a factor, then you can have the team whose average in each of these things was the best. All right. So we've got to get away from making the top feel good. You made the all-star team, you won the jamboree competition, and make everyone else feel like, well, that was a waste of time, or I'm not any good, or I need to go find another sport. All right. I'm not into participation trophies. Don't get me wrong. Okay. I don't think just because you show up, you should get a trophy for that. That's not what I'm saying here. But you know what? If we're going to preach player development, coach player development. and reward player development. When you give out game balls after the game, make sure you give them out for the person who demonstrated the best life skills, who picked a teammate up when he was down, when he could have quit after a strikeout but went out and made a great play on defense. All these life skills that you've been preaching during practice, when you hand out rewards after a game at the end of the season, don't worry about who had the best batting average or the lowest ERA or whatever. Reward the kids who improved the most, who demonstrated what you said were the goals of the program: player development and being that kind of team person. Okay. So I think leagues just need to step back and say to themselves, how are we set up? Who are we really encouraging to participate in our program? Because what's happening, Cole, is a lot of players are going to play other sports that are much more engaging, lacrosse and whatever. The top players are going off and playing club ball. So they may want to, say, continue to play Little League so that they can maybe go to Williamsport and win a world championship. But they're going to go to club ball because that's where they feel like they're challenged the most. Well, what happens to everybody else? Okay, what are they doing? All right, first of all, they're not feeling like they're getting to play with their friends as often as they would like to, right? Because their friends are off doing other sports and other teams, and they don't feel like they're being developed and rewarded for the things that the league says that they should be rewarded and getting out of the league. So I think leagues, programs need to align what's actually happening with what they say their purpose is, because they're saying one thing and the message they're giving is something completely different. Okay.
Right. So kind of like another one is, I think it's always a sticking point with leagues like this, is the role of the parent, right? So it's, how do you communicate this why? Like, why do we do this to parents and to players, obviously, that kind of ensure that it resonates with them? Like, this is the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish with the league, why we're trying to push this, whatever our philosophy is, right? That not only can influence their decision to join the league, but also stay in the league.
Right. Well, first of all, their sons and daughters are going to come home and say, I had a great time. Okay. I'm actually getting better. All right. The coach cares about me. He understands how, who I am and how I think and how I learn. So they're going to get direct feedback from their children who are participating in these programs, what they're getting out of it. I'm told all the time, Adam, my son or daughter never knew how to give a handshake properly until they played for you. All of a sudden, my son or daughter is asking me what they can do to help make dinner, clean up after dinner. They're volunteering to help read with their brother or sister. They never used to do anything like that. It was all about themselves. They just storm off to their room and huddle up with their device. And that's the last I saw them. I had to beg them to come out and be part of the family. So they're starting to learn what it means to be a valuable member of a team, of a group. So yes, part of this is going to have to be set out in the preseason meeting. Okay. You're going to have to say, this is going to be a different philosophy. And we're going to get into some of this, some of these specifics about how do we go about designing this within the league so that this is actually done, but just laying the groundwork here. You have this preseason meeting and say, this is going to be different. All right. This is even at the high school level. Let's just use that as an example. I go to high school games all the time. I don't know about your area, but in our area at the high school level, they play 3 games a week. Okay. At the freshman, JV2 level, it's just like it is at the varsity. They got 12, 13, 14 guys on the team. The same 9, maybe 10 at the most if there's a relief pitcher. They play every game. There's got guys on the bench every game that hardly get any playing time. That is just unbelievable to me. How do you expect those guys to stay in the program when they never play? How are you going to develop everybody and, create depth in your program if they don't play, right? We should have uh, 9 guys play 4 innings at least the first game, and whoever played 3 innings, there's 7-inning games in high school in Oregon, and whoever played 3 innings the first game plays 4 innings the second game. But everybody plays at least 3 innings, if not 4 innings, every game. Then the third game of the week, if you want to set up a carrot and stick, type of thing, or a reward, then maybe you can play your, best 9 at that time. Okay. But bottom line is, we shouldn't have people riding the bench. We shouldn't be caring, particularly at the freshman and JV levels, who wins. It's not about who wins. It's are we developing the players? Are they staying engaged? Are they having fun because they're actually playing and learning and growing? All right. Can't do that on the bench. So why are we out there grinding out every win? It's just backward, So I think if you go about your business the right way, the children will tell the parents, they'll communicate the parents. The parents will see it. I had one parent come up to me the first year I was a varsity coach, and one kid who was just growing into his body, he was bigger than the rest of the people. He wasn't doing very well, and he was really hard on himself, like a lot of youth are. And I went over and I put my arm around him, and I looked him in the eye and I said, I've got you. I'm going to be with you, and you're going to get better every week, every year. He was a freshman at the time, and he wanted to quit. And his parent came up to me a couple of weeks later when she had the opportunity, the mom did, and she said, I've never seen any coach put his arm around my son in a very caring, I've got you type of way. Never. She said that just almost brought me to tears, because I could tell the way you did it, and his reaction to you was you had developed a relationship with him where that meant something to him. That same player 4 years later was voted the number 5 best position player in the entire league, and he was ready to quit as a freshman. So the parents will see it, the children will communicate it, but yeah, you'll have to be proactive in your preseason meetings about setting the boundaries of what you're going to do and why you're going to do it, and kind of help them with this paradigm shift too. Okay.
So now moving into what we here just earlier mentioned about how to establish, league. So, what do you do to establish a league culture that aligns rewards with the intention of developing champions for life?
Yeah. Let's get into the specifics here about this, so that we can actually give a structure to leagues or whatever. I've been doing this 40 plus years, being a youth sports coach. And when you get to my age and stage, you start to look back and say, I did a lot of things right. I wish I would have done some things differently. But certainly from a league-wide perspective, when you see your America's pastime not being the pastime anymore, and so many players moving on to lacrosse and other sports, and you can see even players today. I mean, I don't know about you and in Colorado, but you see a lot of kids gathering up their friends every day and going out on their own to play baseball. Just gather them up, go down to the park and play baseball on their own. I don't see it very much anymore.
Not as much as I would like.
Don't. They're home. No, yeah, they don't do it very much anymore. And if they are out doing things, they're doing things that they've learned to be more engaging. Okay, they're out riding their like in Oregon, they're out riding their skateboards. They're out riding their bikes, and there's nothing wrong with those things. Those are fantastic things, but they're not playing baseball, because baseball's boring. Baseball's boring, and no one's even taught me how to play games with just 4 or 5 of my friends. So they don't even know what to do. So I think that the survival of our game is almost at risk here if we don't make some changes in what we do and how we go about it. The first thing about baseball, as I just mentioned, is we hear all the time, is young people today, because everything is so fast paced with their video games and everything in their life, baseball's boring. It's boring. I have a saying that, the only people who think baseball are boring people. But the honest truth is the kids think it's boring because they're not engaged enough. All right. They're on the bench. They're standing out in the field, wait for the ball being hit to them. And they're not getting enough action. They're not getting enough reps. They can go play lacrosse. They are constantly moving. The ball is constantly in play. Same with soccer. Same with basketball. It's not that way in baseball, especially at the younger ages, the way it's designed right now. It's boring to them. Okay. The second reality is baseball's very difficult to play and even more difficult to coach. There's thousands of details that need to be taught just to have the team function in a game, and knowing all the rules, knowing what to do, when to do it, how to do it. And we're asking dads to do this who have very limited time. Okay. They don't have time to really learn how to coach properly every position. So if we want a league to really develop players and be really good, we're asking dads most of the time to do way too much, things that they cannot do. All right. Now I'll get to how we overcome that in a minute. I'm not saying that every team should have a professional coach, but we have to understand who these people are that are volunteering to coach. And thank God we have them. I mean, they're doing a really tough job and putting a lot of mostly thankless time into doing it. But we have to understand we're asking them to do almost the impossible. Baseball is different than most other sports in what is involved to play it and teach it. Therefore, since the league is not really organized to help these coaches coach in a person, athlete, player way, they're not teaching these coaches how to properly teach and to be great teachers. They're not giving them enough equipment. They're not giving them enough training to do what they need to do. Year to year, these coaches are kind of doing what they were taught, which you and I know most of the time is wrong. They may even be great players, but a lot of what they think is the right way to hit a baseball, pitch a baseball, it's not. As we talked last podcast, they may not have played catcher. They really don't know much about it. Okay. They may not have even been a pitcher. So they may not know much about that. So we have to understand, if the league's not going to help train them, if they're not going to go about it differently, these kids year to year are not going to get very good training. And they're probably going to get a lot of inconsistent messaging. That's not how you bunt. That's not how you load your back leg when you, your hip, when you pitch or you hit. That's not how you go about doing what you're doing. You're going to hear different things every year. So is that going to make a kid stick around? This league can't even teach me the right things. I'm hearing one thing from one coach and the next thing from the next coach. And all I know is I'm not doing any one thing long enough to really get good at it. The top 2 or 3 guys who have a certain level of natural ability are improving, but the rest of us really aren't. And we're just living on our 2 great pitchers and our great catchers. The rest of the team's not very good, but we're still winning. So I guess that's fun. But deep down inside, they know I'm really not improving the way I'm improving. But you know what the top players are doing? That they're really good, but they're not getting the individual training. Some of them who can afford it, they're going out and hiring personal coaches because they're not getting the individual skill training in their league. Well, what does that do? A, it favors the rich. B, it sets up the situation where even more inconsistent messaging is going to go. The personal coach is going to tell them one thing. The players' team coach or coaches are going to tell them something else. And who knows, dad or mom who played the sport are going to tell them something else. They may have 3 different messages that are being given. So is that going to make me want to play the sport and to stick with it? No, uh, this is not good. And then from the person, athlete, player philosophy, they're not getting things taught to them in a proactive way that would really help them. In other words, they're just being told after the fact, you should have done this, you should have handled it that way. There's no mistake rituals. There's no say, okay, like we talked last time, you're going to be up with the bases loaded, you're going to strike out. How are you going to handle it? As a student, you're going to get a pop quiz or an exam that was unfair for whatever reason. How are you going to handle it? All right, relating the baseball stuff to the student stuff. So they need to realize that if we're going to help these kids handle adversity, have a growth mindset, we need to do it proactively. Okay, we just can't wait until the season's over. You know what? I laugh all the time about the championship teams. Every championship player being interviewed on TV. Well, what does it say about this team that you got here from where you started? Oh, we overcame so much adversity. We had to overcome so much this season. All that's absolutely true. But again, you're interviewing the victorious team. What about all the other teams that were involved? They didn't handle it. Well, you know why they didn't handle it? Because proactively, they did, especially at the youth level, they didn't discuss how they were going to handle it before it happened. Then they would have handled it better. But they, in baseball in particular, we're known as a game of failure, a game of adversity, and we, are satisfied by handling things implicitly instead of proactively. So let me give 5 litmus tests. So let's say, okay, we want to make changes. All right. We want to make changes to our program. What are 5 things that we will use as benchmarks if we're making the right changes to our league? All right. Number 1 and most important, whatever changes you make, are the players going to consider the game more fun? Okay. Figure out how to make it fun. There's a quote in my quote book that says, teach players to do something difficult by having them do something fun. All right. So figure out a way to teach and make it fun at the same time. The old ARC, action, repetition, competition, add an F to it. When you're doing all those 3 things, make sure it's fun too. So in other words, if I'm a player, am I excited to come back tomorrow and participate in a practice like that? Was it fun for me? All right. So that's number 1. Number 2, does every part of practice engage, or whatever changes you're going to make, practice, game, or whatever, does it engage more players? Or is it simply only getting more out of a few? Okay. We need to make sure that everybody's engaged. All right. That's the only way we're going to hold their attention and hold their interest. Number 3, will the changes make the individuals better and not just the team better in the long run? Okay. Are we improving them as athletes? And are we teaching to the spectrum top to bottom? So are the players overall getting better? You can have a team that's 12-0 in the season, but like I say, they're riding 2 great pitchers. Everybody else isn't really that good. All right. Secondly, similar to that, number 4, is the entire league getting stronger? Sometimes leagues have this top level that go out and win a bunch of tournaments or are known for, they're a really good league. They're not really a really good league. Their top team is really good. Everybody below it, not very good, not getting developed, not feeling like they're improving. So they are shrinking in numbers because they're really serving only the few. And again, 5, whatever changes you make sure you're making them with the person, athlete, player in mind. So, okay, specifically, what do we do? So I could go and suggest a lot of specific changes, Cole, but I know that this is treading on out into waters that most leagues don't want to go. We've been doing it this way forever. We're happy with the way we're doing it. We're okay with winning games and championships. But I think what we've got to do is open up our mind to our game is shrinking. It's not growing in most places. I don't want to generalize like everywhere, but in a lot of places, our game is shrinking. So I think we have to open up our mind to the realities of what I've just laid out about what players are these days, what keeps them engaged, and what we actually do. All right. Number one, I think you need to separate the developmentally advanced players from those that are learning. So in Oregon, we have Junior Baseball of Oregon. We have national level for the guys that are brand new to the game, just developing. Then we have an American level, that's the intermediate level, and then we have a federal level. This can get very political at times. You got to be careful that these levels don't carry over just to keep the group together, because I've known a lot of players that have started out at the national level and the minor level, and then junior level, they were American level players, and senior level, they were federal level players and went on to be great varsity level players. Or however, they, if developed properly, improved and ultimately were really, really good players. So I think we got to be careful about these levels. But I do think that you've got a responsibility to develop the entire spectrum, top to bottom, and you're going to have to make different rules for different levels. Okay, I think you've got to step back and say, not all of the levels should go out and play 30, 40 games in a season plus 5 tournaments. That's really not what's going to develop those national and American levels. The federal level players, the highest level players, they may be ready for it, all right? But the rest of them really are not. So I think you have to look at that, your league, and it has to maybe adjust year to year, because not all leagues have the same quality of players coming into them year to year. Now, if you've designed your programs correctly, yes, they will. But I think you have to assess this every year. You need to go out, Cole, and actually, as a league board, you actually have to watch these games. I don't know how many games, Cole, you've watched recently at the youth level, at the very younger levels, where they're just starting out, deciding whether they want to stick with baseball or not. You would be, if you have, you would be shocked. What?
I try to avoid it as much as
Say it
possible.
again.
I try to avoid it as much as possible.
Well, for good or for bad, I do, like I say, recommend that all coaches go and coach a beginning level team every 4 or 5 years, because if you can coach the beginners, you're going to be a much, much better coach coaching the kids that are advanced. But so I do, go out and watch a lot of baseball teams at the developing levels. And it is shocking to me how few baseball plays are made in those games. Those games are walks, hit batters, errors. A very typical at bat is walk or hit batter, steal second, steal third, score on a passed ball or wild pitch, over and over and over again. More often than not, these games have more walks, more hit batters, more errors than runs. And it's not even close when you consider legitimate RBIs. Even shortstops on these teams cannot consistently make a good throw to first base. So you've got a bunch of board players on the bench. You got a bunch of board players in the outfield. You've got players that are being forced to play all these games when A, they really don't understand the game very well, but B, their individual skills are not very good. And they know it's not very good, and they've got 50 to however many parents watching them be bad. And we're asking them to stick with this sport? No, they're not going to stick with it. They're not going to feel good about themselves doing it. All right, so what am I recommending? So here's my radical ideas. At these levels, where your honest assessment is these kids are not being engaged enough and not enough baseball plays are being made, all right? For part of the season, you need to have no strikeouts, no walks, and no score. Okay? For if you're going to play games, none of that is going to happen. All right? You're going to give the pitchers 3 pitches, and it's like the college rule. We're on or out in 3 pitches. And if the kid strikes out, he doesn't strike out. We're going to have a batter put a ball in play every at bat so that the team on defense is forced to make a baseball play on every play. If this league doesn't have catchers that can consistently throw to second base accurately to have a chance to throw a runner out, there's no stolen bases. Okay, it's ridiculous. Leave the player on first, leave the players on first and second, and force the defense to think about double plays, getting lead runners, and things like that. This walk and hit batter, stolen base, score on a wild pitch or pass ball is not serving the players at all. It's not engaging the players on defense at all, right? They're just standing there watching the pitcher walk people, standing there watching kids steal bases. This is absurd. This is absolutely absurd. So I don't care how the ball is put in play, off a tee, coach pitch, self-toss, I don't care. Every batter should put a ball in play. The defense should have to make a play with every batter. Now I understand eventually kids got to learn how to deal with striking out. Pitchers got to learn about giving up bombs. I get that. We got to learn. We can't, marginalize them, fragilize them by taking away. But, initially we got to engage these kids. We got to develop these kids. They're not developing. I would challenge coaches or board members, go out and pick players on the team and just have somebody keep track, infielders, outfielders, the entire game. How many plays did the right fielder get in that entire game? How many balls were hit to them? How many times did they actually get involved in the game? And when they did, how well did they do? They didn't get that many balls. Even at shortstop, he might have got 4 balls the entire game. Okay? A lot of these players don't get a single ball in the entire game. Why? Because there's not enough balls being put in play. So they're not developing. Then we wonder why they don't know how to play the game. They're not having any fun. All right? So the other thing that needs to happen, again, completely radical, but let's open up our mind to the benefits here. Everyone plays, everyone bats every inning. Well, Adam, that's not possible. There's only 9 spots on defense. We got 12 players. All right, we have 4 outfielders. We have 5 infielders, a pitcher, catcher, and we have somebody back up first base. And every 6 batters, they switch the first baseman and the backup guy. Well, Adam, that's not baseball. Oh, you know what is baseball? It's 9 guys not getting enough action, except maybe pitcher and catcher. 3, 4, however many guys sitting on the bench, and people getting bored and not getting enough action. So if we only give them 3 pitches to put the ball in play off a pitcher, and now we're hitting and putting the ball in play, you can get 12 guys up every inning. All right? And you don't have outs. You're just making 12 baseball plays every inning. All right? And everybody's playing. There's nobody on the bench. Okay, I'm saying on defense. All 12 guys are going to hit. All 12 guys are going to be on defense every inning. Shorten the game to 5 innings. How many at-bats do you get in a normal game? Maybe 3. If you're lucky, hitting near the top half of the order, maybe 4. Guess what? Everybody's getting 5, and you're not coming back to the bench after a strikeout, and you're not just going down to first base on a walk. You're actually hitting the ball. That's fun. You're actually running the bases, not just stealing uncontested. You're having to think while you're a base runner. You're getting so much more out of the game. All right? Now, after certain players have developed their skills and their knowledge of the game to a certain level, go play tournaments at that point with those players. Leave the rest of them playing these league games amongst them, the teams or themselves, or maybe this has to be adopted district-wide, other teams and other development level things. So like if you're in Little League, you have a bunch of teams, you do this within the league. If you're junior baseball, we go and play other national, American, and federal teams throughout our counties. All right. So you have 10 teams in a county. But again, the model should be the same. No strikeouts, no walks, no score. Everybody at bats, everybody plays. And so they're constantly engaged. Now, here's the other radical thing that I think needs to happen. These dads, like I say, they may have been a really good pitcher, but don't know a lot about catching. They may be a really good outfielder, but don't know a lot about anything else. They might not have been really good at anything. They just played the game. We want them to coach, all right? Not saying they shouldn't coach, but is that really what's going to benefit the players? No, it's not going to benefit the players. They've got one guy and two other dads as assistants that really don't know what they're doing. So what do most leagues do, Cole? Most leagues have a coach's clinic, maybe a couple clinics at the beginning of the year to give the coaches an idea of a few things, drills or whatever that they could do. Maybe the varsity coach and some players come down, and they should, not just once, but multiple times every year, give some clinics, because varsity coaches don't want to have to reteach when the players get to the varsity level. They want to just refine, okay? But what about this way? Have all the coaches come, and maybe you need to recruit coaches, have come at the beginning of the year and say, you know, what do you think your expertise is? Infield, outfield, pitcher, catcher, whatever. What is it that you're really good at? Instead of players going to their team twice, 3 times a week, how about twice a week? We have, for half the year, half of them go to infield coaches, and the other half of the year they go to outfield coaches for actual clinics from guys that know what they're doing, know what the right fundamentals are, know how to teach it properly, how to make it fun, okay, how to keep everyone engaged. They're really good at those things. Then you have a third clinic for pitchers and catchers, okay? A lot of what's being taught, as we've said before, is wrong by these dads. It's just wrong. That's not how you throw and field and hit a baseball, okay? So, and particularly with, as you know, Cole, being a pitching coach, pitchers and catchers, it's so critical that these kids from a young age get the right information. Well, they're not getting it. Nothing against the dads, but they're not getting it most of the time. They're just not. So they should go to clinics with coaches that know what they're doing twice a week. You have a third one for pitchers and catchers. And once a week, they're with their teams where they're learning about the rules of the game, base running, building team stuff. Now, that's not to say that at these other things that we shouldn't be teaching them the athleticism piece as well. We shouldn't be teaching the life skills. It doesn't matter. Those things go along with every training session. But I think leagues are missing out on developing players because they're asking coaches to coach things they don't know how to coach. Okay? So let's put the people in your league who are experts at pitching, at catching, at infield and outfield. And if you don't have them, then connect with your high school programs, okay? Recruit coaches who know these things, who can come twice a week, don't have to worry about team. A lot of coaches that are really, really good, maybe you would show up, Cole, if they didn't ask you to coach the team. But if you could coach some 6th graders, 8th graders, whatever, in just pitching twice a week for this league, you might do it. All right, if you could just do your thing and your skill, right? And then, as I mentioned here, I still think we have to remember we're really pounding on these kids about being athletes and playing multiple sports. Fantastic. But let's include things in each training session that train them to be athletes. that are going to teach them, as we said before, the basics of crawl, walk, march, skip, bound, sprint, jump, hop, backpedal, and shuffle. And let's progress them year to year with something that's structured, organized, developed, programmed, and supervised by the league. Let's make sure that these kids are developing as athletes. Let's program that in. Again, if you don't know what you're doing, bring people in that can show you how to teach the basics and how to progress it. All right. You may not even have to have them in more than 2 or 3 times to teach you and your different levels how to progress this. And then finally, I'll just mention this again. We have to make sure that when we're in the player development, we don't forget the personal stuff. No matter how we're doing it, what we're doing it, we gotta do the life lesson talks, the role plays, all those kind of things, so that we remember that coaching is simply teaching life lessons within the game for beyond the game. It's the quality of the person, not the player. That's the most important outcome. So even things like positive thinking, you can't just think positive. You've got to proactively train kids to know how to focus and stay in the moment and be positive. All right. So it's not just hoping everything's going to be able to turn out right. It's actually knowing that you've trained them proactively so that it will turn out right. Now, I know a lot of what I just said, Cole, is almost sacrilegious. I mean, it's going against every convention almost every league has done since the beginning of time. But I really think we need to open our minds, whether you use my suggestions or other suggestions, be creative, keep in mind, what and why are we doing what we're doing, and do more at the league level than just manage practice times and game times. Okay, that's what they normally do. Your practice times, days are these. Your game times, days are these. This is how, we're going to divide things up, time, equipment, whatever. But they're not programming player development at the league level at all. Okay, and they need to, for all the reasons that we just went through. They need to program this stuff so that players are being developed. Players are staying engaged. Families want to be part of the program. Because again, like I said, if we don't do this, it won't be very long, Cole, before baseball won't even be a major sport anymore at the youth level. Kids are just going to stop playing it for all these reasons. So it can ultimately be about the survival of our sport.
Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying today's conversation with Adam Sarancik as much as I am. We're diving deep into the heart of what makes youth baseball so transformative, not just for the players on the field, but for everyone involved in this game. Before we slide back into our discussion, I want to take a quick moment to thank you all for tuning into the Basketball Baseball Podcast. If you're finding value in our talks, if the stories we share resonate with you, or if you're picking up strategies and insights that are changing the game for your team, I have a small favor to ask. Please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Sharing this podcast with your friends, family, or anyone else who loves baseball is the biggest compliment you can give us. It helps us grow and continue bringing you content that lights up your passion for the game. And hey, we love hearing from you. Drop us a comment and send us a message if you enjoyed or if you'd like to hear more about in the future. Your feedback is the compass that guides our journey together. All right, let's get back onto the field with Adam and explore more about creating leagues that champion the Champions for Life philosophy. Yeah. Have you ever heard, you when you were going through all that, like, have you ever heard of a thing called speedball before? Okay, so there's this league out in, I think it's in Northern California, so it's not too far from you. It's called Speedball. It was created by this guy, David Klein, who I think he played minor league baseball. I don't know how far he got. But basically the essence is you play these games, and it's like 3 teams of 5, right? And I really just like this concept because, like, what you're talking about, like, keeping guys engaged and letting them being able to do all these types of things, where I think there's no pitcher, and I don't think there's a catcher either. So it's like a coach pitch thing, but you have 3 teams of 5, 5 kids in the outfield, 5 kids in the infield, and 5 kids hitting, and you just kind of rotate them out. You basically take away all the dead time, so there's no dead space in between games. So you keep the kids interactive, and they get to hit outfield work, they get to hit infield work, and they get to hit all in the span of like it's a 2-hour game or an hour and a half. I don't know how long it is, but like every kid's gonna get at least like 10 at bats in the span of that game, right? And the ball's always going to be kind of in play at different times throughout the game, so the kids are always engaged and something's always happening. Like I'll send you a link to their website. It's actually like their concept's really really cool, and I really am a big fan of it. I think more youth level, league.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Yeah.
Something like more.
A couple things just occurred to me when you said that. Yeah, yeah. A couple of things occurred to me while you were talking about that. Number one, I'm not saying that these changes have to go for the entire year, because people saying, well, I mean, I think the clinics and having coaches coach who know how to coach, I think that should go the entire year. But as far as, having no outs, no walks, no strikeouts, blah, 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 make it half the year. Yeah. All right. That it's that way. And then as they start to improve, then have them play a normal game, 9 people on defense, 3 outs, keep score, whatever. But I think you need to step back and say, objectively, where are we at and what's really going to benefit these kids the most. Another thing is, have you heard of futsal in soccer?
The smaller
so
soccer
it's taking
field,
smaller area, and it's much quicker, and you're forced to react and thing. Your speedball kind of reminds me a little bit of that, in that maybe you don't have 9 guys on each side, you have 5, and so there's more interaction, more engagement, more activity. So maybe it's like that. Here's another novel idea. I hate fall ball for 10 different reasons, but I might actually get on board with it to a limited extent if you took these ideas that I just laid out and implement them in fall ball. Instead of just playing doubleheaders on Sunday in fall ball, how about we go with this format where we're doing a player development program where everybody plays, everybody hits every inning, and you're just working on playing the game and getting better at playing the game because there's so many more baseball plays being done. How about we start a fall ball league that way?
Right.
Or we play that way for the first hour and a half, and the last half hour we have an inning or 2 of regular baseball. In other words, like I say, just be creative here. There's a lot of things I think we could do to make the game more appealing to the younger generation and actually develop them better. But I'm telling you, the current way we're doing it is not working anymore. Okay, to the extent that it ever did. It's certainly not working now. We need to open up our minds that there might be some adjustments that need to be made. Yeah.
While we're working on figuring out ways to fix, like we've come up with ideas like how do you fix this system, but I kind of like the whole ending question of I think this episode is, in your opinion, like does youth baseball have the courage to change? Like we've thrown out ideas, we've thrown out what changes could and probably should be made, but does youth baseball have that desire to change in large part?
All I can say, Cole, is I've given what they should do and why they should do it. If they look at statistically the numbers of fans that are following baseball, it hasn't grown. The people that followed baseball in their youth are in their youth are now 50, 60 years old. That's the bulk of the fans. You're not seeing near as many kids really get excited about baseball. I know most of the players that I have coached in the last 5 or 10 years, if I ask them who's your favorite player and why, maybe half of them will have a favorite player and why. Maybe half of them can tell me as much about their baseball player MLB players as they can about the NFL players or their NBA players or even the soccer players. Youth now have a lot more interest and role models or whatever in these other sports. They don't go home and watch baseball. They'll go home and turn on the TV if they do, or go on their devices. They won't tune into a baseball game. It's not interesting to them. Okay. There's not enough engagement for them. I mean, I have a whole nother thing on, how how the MLB and, just the media in general can help engage young people in baseball, but they're not interested in baseball anymore. So I don't know if they have the courage to. All I know is they don't. Like I said, baseball is going to, largely cease to exist in 10, 20 years. Maybe there's a lot of money into it, and for some it'll still be. But just look at what's happening to minor league and minor league baseball, and how many stadiums are being shut down and going out of business or whatever. Because kids just aren't that interested in it. At least in America, I don't know how it is. I'm watching the Dodgers and the Padres play over in Korea and stuff, and maybe in the Asian countries, it's still very, very popular and growing and whatever. But it's not here. So I don't know whether they have the courage to change or not. But all I know is if they implement some of these changes, we can reverse this trend, and things can get back to kids really enjoying it again, and really recruiting their friends to come play. Because right now, what I'm seeing, Cole, is they're recruiting their kids, their friends, to go play other sports. Oh, we have so much fun in soccer. We have so much fun in lacrosse. We have so much fun in this. And it's because it's much more engaging. They're just getting a lot more activity. Don't go play baseball. It's boring. You just sit and wait for the ball to come to you. You'll just sit on the bench, whatever. There's just not enough engagement for them right now. So I hope so.
Well,
I hope so.
that's one of the things I think about, like especially in the youth category, right? Where it's tough to play outfield because most kids can't get the ball to the outfield, right? Whereas you play on, like you say with your futsal example, is like if you shrink the field, and that's one of the things I think about in this speedball thing, where they bring the fences in, so balls are more likely to get to the outfield. Younger guys are more likely to hit home runs, right? And like how many kids just are over the moon if they hit a ball over the fence, right? And that gets them engaged. Like, oh my God, I did something really cool, right? More balls are in play.
Right.
More balls have the chance to go out, where kids are excited for themselves. Like one of the things I think about with this speedball example is like they do a very good job of, every kid's going to get a jersey. Like they have their name on the back of their jersey in the league, right? Every kid, when they come up, they have a walk-up song, right? Where they make it fun. They allow kids to be expressive, and they see the whole exactly. So, but then, like I said, like maybe in these youth levels, like these 8 to 12 levels, where kids are, not as strong, not as big. There's not as much action. Like you encourage the action, and then as they get into that 13, 14, into the high school range, then you start actually playing like what real baseball is. Right, because then there's more activity.
Well, I think developmentally, I think developmentally at every level, you're going to have advanced players that are ready to play real baseball. Sure. And so whether they're 10U, 12U, or 14U, I'm not saying you should have this for the whole league. Like I said, the very first thing I said was make sure you separate out the developmentally advanced from everyone else, or else just those higher level players aren't even going to play in your league. They're just going to go play club ball. All right. They got to feel like there's a place for them. Okay. But at the same time, the points you brought up, I mean, just think of what could be done, Cole. I mean, kids today are so creative and they're so technologically advanced. Why are we having Giants or Yankees or whatever across the jerseys? How about let a kid or a team design their own jerseys or their own hats? Or, how about, how we have home run derbies? How about we play for an hour and a half and the last half hour is a home run derby? How fun would that be? Or some other, competition that is fun for the players. You know what I'm saying? I just think there's a lot more creative things that could be done to make it fun for the players without taking away from the game long term or the game for the really advanced players. It doesn't have to be one size fits all, and we could really think outside the box. But yeah, I love what you're saying. Walk up songs, walk in or walk two songs. Um, there's so many things that could be done that these players would say, "Oh, I really look forward to this." I feel like there's a place. I may not have had the highest batting average, but I designed our team jersey. It's just some. There's just some things that we could do if we just weren't stuck in doing it the same way year after year after year, because we've had success winning games and championships. We're just living on this. Well, we're not going to change because we like winning games and championships. Well, that's good for your all-star team, or that's good for the top 12. What about everybody else that you're asking to stick with the program and your commitment to them long term? Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So wrapping up this final episode, I think,
Mm-hmm.
as we look back on everything we've discussed from the, building champions for life, the person, the player, the athlete, everything we've gone through, like, what do you think are your, what do you think is the most single important action that coaches and parents and leagues administrators, like, when we're looking at our champions for life philosophy, what is the most important action that they can bring on to help develop youth baseball and high school baseball and basically everything we'd work on in the champions for life philosophy in the coming years?
Yeah. Well, it really comes back to the same thing, Cole. We coach people, not sports. You have to remember that these kids are kids, and 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the road, they're not going to remember what you said. They're not going to remember what you did. They're going to remember how you made them feel. And they're going to thank you for making them a better person. So you have to have this paradigm shift and to remember it's about the person. It's who they're becoming, not what they're accomplishing. Okay. And whether you're in it 1 year or 20 years, you might be just one person to the world, but to the world, to one person, you may be the world. So to the world, you may be one person, but to one person, you may be the world. So you can have an enormous impact if you remember that it's about people, not sports. And secondly, from the sport aspect, you have to connect with a person and train the athlete if they're going to have the best potential to be the best player. So it's person, athlete, player. And that programming has to be in everything. You can't go player and just by derivative hope that you're making them better athletes and better people. That's backward. Okay. Start with the person, connect, validate, and support the person, and specifically program that. Specifically, proactively program developing better athletes. You put those two things together, you're going to end up with great players who will, win you your games and championships. So I just think it's that mindset, that person, athlete, player mindset that has to change. And once that change, everything else flows through it. If the coaches or whomever have listened to every podcast, all 5 of these, no matter what topic we've dealt with, that same theme is throughout everything. So that approach is the key to all of this. Okay.
All right. I think that's a good way to summarize and wrap up however everything we've talked about in this series. So, Adam, do you have finally do you have anything to plug for this last episode, this last edition of our exploration into the philosophy?
Right, right. Well, as people can tell if they've listened to one or more of these podcasts, I'm about methodology. I have in my books, a certain number of things about how to throw a field and hit a baseball, that's for sure. But if they care about the method of how to teach and develop players, athletes, teams, and leagues, um, my books, Coaching Champions for Life, The Process of Mentoring the Person, Athlete, and Player, and the companion book, Takeaway Quotes for Champions for Life. Those are really, really, really helpful. If they want to be entertained by kind of a fun story that illustrates the problem that we inevitably encounter with parents, my book, A Ground Ball to Shortstop, How and Why Coaches See Their Game Differently Than Anyone Else. All three of those are on Amazon. All have been in the top 100 at baseball coaching books at one time or another. So they can pick those up, and they come in all formats. You've got color, black and white, hardback, paperback, ebook. So all the formats are there. But it's what I've tried to do in those books is give the coaches ready to go outlines, program pieces, and a methodology about how to teach, role model, mentor, players, how to develop teams and leagues. So there's a real practical methodology in all of the books. And then if you want to continue to read what I have to say, my website, the Hot Stove page on Coaching Champions for Life, we'll have my articles there, and you can get it there. And I love talking baseball. If people want to contact me at my email, asarancik@gmail.com, and we can connect by Zoom or Google Meet or by phone or however we want to do it. I talk to coaches all around the country all the time on practice planning and philosophies and drills. And so I just enjoy coaching and helping out however I can. It's about the information for me and the philosophy to help the kids. So I look forward to connecting with coaches, and I hope they'll reach out to me and we can talk.
Nice. Yeah. Well, Adam, thank you so much for imparting some of this philosophy onto the podcast, providing this information. I think a lot of coaches, a lot of parents, and a lot of players who listen to this can take a ton away from everything that we've discussed these last 5 episodes. Like I said, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for everything that you've provided, all this information. This has really been I really appreciate it. I think you've provided a lot of value.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity. Committing to 5 episodes, I tried to put a lot of time in preparation for it. And I tried to be very specific. I listened to a lot of podcasts myself, parts of it and whole podcasts. And a lot of general philosophy is talked about, but I don't think a lot of specifics are given that people can use. And I think if people have only heard 1 or 2 of the 5, I think one of the things they'll see that's consistent in all 5 is we've given them a lot of specifics that they can actually use in their programs. It's just not a general philosophy. It's actually, we've laid out outlines and kind of a methodology that they can actually use. So it's much more specific than your typical podcast. And so I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do it. And I hope people will listen to all 5. And I think they'll get a lot out of them. They will.
Yeah, for sure. So for Adam, everyone listening on this, thank you so much for taking the time to pay attention to this, and we'll all see you soon. All right? As we round the bases and head home on today's episode, I want to take a moment to express my deepest gratitude to Adam Sarancik for joining us and sharing the profound insights and experiences that have shaped his Champions for Life coaching philosophy. Adam, your dedication to not just the game of baseball, but to the development of young athletes as individuals of character and resilience is truly commendable. Thank you for being with us and for all that you do. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in and being a part of this special series. It's been a journey of discovery, learning, and inspiration, and we hope that you found as much value in these conversations as we have. The principles and practices we've explored are more than just strategies for success on the field. They're lessons from life, and we're excited to see how you'll implement them in your teams, your families, and your communities. If you're inspired by today's discussion and interested in diving deeper into Adam's Champions for Life philosophy, I've got great news for you. Links to Adam's books, where he delves into these concepts in even greater depth and provides actionable advice for coaches, parents, and players, are available right now in the description for this episode. We highly encourage you to check them out and continue your journey towards excellence in both baseball and life. As we close out this series, remember that every pitch, every hit, and every play is an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to lead. Let's take the lessons we've learned and the inspiration we've gained and put them into action. Together, we can create a future for youth baseball that's not only about producing great athletes, but also nurturing great people. Thank you once again for joining the Fast Performance Baseball podcast. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already, and keep an eye out for more episodes that will inspire, educate, and entertain. Until next time, keep swinging for the fences, not just in the game, but in everything you do. This is Cole Thomas signing off. Play hard, play smart,